Hey, video diary. I wonder if Forrest, was able to imagine how much misery he was going to cause me. It's undescribable. Indescribable? Whatever. And I just, think about all the junkies. And Forrest wasn't the worst of junkies. Like he didn't go to levels that maybe given time or other people have. But I know that would have happened. It happens to everybody. I saw an article about heroin users that are like maintenance heroin users that are using it, you know, in a controlled way every day. I don't know, man. The whole thing seems really disgusting. I feel disgusted. I don't mean to judge it as more than to say that when I think about injecting yourself with heroin, with a needle into your bloodstream and laying back and feeling better and relying on that, it's just completely fucked up. It's artificial. It's keeping you out of the game. My experience isn't that. My experience is losing my son to an overdose. I was just thinking of all those parents that I met who found their kids, you know, in the bedroom or wherever they found them. And I didn't find Forrest. If the last image in my mind was him, because that's how he was. If that was the last image in my mind, I might even be more upset. I hung out at his casket. I stared at him inches away. I took a couple of photographs just right over the top. And that's burned into my mind. A death like this reveals the cosmetics of what we impose upon our life. And that includes religion, most of our habits, most of our beliefs. It just ripped it all away. It rips it all away because we're all going to die. And we're all going to have those, if we're lucky, we're going to have a few moments to reflect and say, what was my life? What did I leave? What did I give? What did I take? What am I proud of? What am I not proud of? Where are my firewalls where I don't want to deal with certain things and I just kind of live in a tunnel vision of my own mental creation, you know? This blew it up for me. Forrest dying was like, it made me reevaluate just because I couldn't stomach anything that was alcoholic or addictive or toxic on certain levels. I just lost my son. I'm not going to put up with addictions within inches of my face, so I retreated. I guess I have gone inside. And You know, no one can comfort me. I've said this before. It's not because I'm, stoic or don't want to be comforted. I do. But the reality of this is such that there's no relief from the grief. Not thinking about it. It's tough. I made a list for my son. Number one, there's no excuse for harming your body. There's no excuse. If you're doing something that harms your body, it's immoral. It's a crime against nature. Not a god or gods. It's a crime against yourself and nature and the web, right? The web that we all are connected to. There's no excuse for not being skilled or educated. There just isn't. If you're going to live in this world, grow your brain, because your brain is the main driver, the engine. And you have to learn how to use it. And there are people throughout history who have handed down really good traditions, methodologies, things that you can take on and reject if you come up with a better one. That's kind of the point. Skills are super cool. Imagine being able to be an archer, like to shoot a bullseye. That'd be super cool. But a person who does that has to train for a long time. I've been playing guitar for 40 years. It's ridiculous. Number 3, there's no excuse for taking up more space than you should. When you sit down, like on a train, and somebody sits down next to you and takes up 2 seats. I've seen people take up 3 seats. And everybody feels it, and it feels shitty because they don't have to. They're imposing that upon everybody. I don't know, I just intrinsically feel, instinctively feel like that's not fair. Or talking too loud. I always marvel at people who talk too loud, usually have the least interesting things to say. If they're saying something really wild, it might be interesting, but usually not. But they're taking up more room. I live in New York City, where it's really intense, and people are very kind and respectful. People who live here and understand that. People who don't, or just are, I don't know. I saw some young guys, they're white, Latino, black, there was a group of them, young guys, but thuggily walking down the street. And I thought, it's intimidating, to be sort of sliding across the street and the pants down and doing their thing. And I was like, I have nothing against their fashion or music or whatever, but it's a vibe that exudes beyond their physical space, that's saying, look at me, I have an issue. And it's about each of us as individuals looking at ourselves going, why do we need to do that? Why are we so insecure that we need to take up more room with our volume, with our even, our habits? Litter. I saw somebody litter. That's an example. Number Number 4, there's no excuse for making excuses. Um, if you're alive and nobody is hurting you, currently hurting you, there's just no excuse. The problem is inside of you to figure out what the issue is. And I've helped homeless people become unhomeless. And one particular case, he just couldn't be comfortable there. It was his headspace, his thought process that kept him homeless. And this was after 3 or 4 times of getting unhomeless. And we talked about that. So I understand people are like mired and anchored in their bullshit, because that's what that was. That's all that was. Somebody being addicted to their suffering. I call it bullshit. Somebody else might be more compassionate and call it, I don't know, addiction to their suffering. If you're alive and nobody has currently got you in a headlock, you have to take a look at yourself, at your thought process of the way that you reason. Of course, if you're on drugs or alcohol or unhealthy, all of that is more difficult. This is for my son, so you can completely disregard this. There's no excuse for using hard drugs. I'm going to go right away and say there are reasons for using some soft drugs, which could be date night, movie, sex, playing, walking down the street, being alone, being with a friend. There's a lot of reasons to have a drink or smoke a joint. It gets annoying when people can't control their pot smoking and they're constantly smoking pot. You have to ask yourself, what that's about. I have fit into that group, and I used to have my one hitter, and I will admit I was using it constantly. And it took a lot to become moderate. So, yeah, moderate use of light drugs, I think, is one of the greatest joys of life. Unfortunately, I don't know if anybody has a cigarette once in a while, or let's say takes a shot of heroin once in a while. I would often hear these guys say, yeah, I'll have a bump of coke once in a while. And I'm like, a bump of coke? If you're willing to do coke, you're doing coke. Probably all the time. That was my take on when I heard that. I'll also say whenever a musician, another professional musician or artist, actor, people in that world, when I caught wind that they were using hard drugs, I couldn't work with them. I knew I could not work with them. And that's been proven out to be, true. I won't go into particulars, but it's just turned out to be true. Anyone who uses hard drugs is just a train wreck, just gonna happen. So there's no excuse for using hard drugs. None. Zero. They kill you. The only reason to do it is because you're addicted and you're saying fuck you to the world and yourself and to nature. There's no excuse for not trying your hardest and doing your best. Trying your hardest and doing your best. I think you know when that happens. You know when it happens. Those are good. Those are really good. There's no excuse for not being kind, polite, professional, and present. Because what's the alternatives? Let's look at the alternatives. You're mean, you're grouchy, you're unprofessional, and you're distracted. This is like every moment should be like this. I don't understand it when people are mean or rude to each other. I'll give you one example. I was on the subway, and this gal had her headphones on, was listening to her music, and she was doing her kind of city thing where she was like zoned out. She was taking up 3 seats, and this other lady walks in, and I'll say they're both ethnic. One Latina, the other was Indian, and or ethnic. They're that ethnicity, and and the Indian lady was just trying to get her attention. Say, "Oh, may I sit? Do you mind if I sit?" And I could tell, because I observed people, that the first lady, she knew she was there, because she was like, she had this sort of "I'm not going to notice you" kind of thing. And the woman almost puts her hand in front of her face to try to get her attention. And then she just like very gently taps her on the shoulder. And, the lady taking up more room than she should actually flinched out and was like, "Yo, what's up? How dare you touch me? Say excuse me," and took on this thing. And I saw this whole thing go down, and I'm like, what kind of life do you have to have on a daily level, on a momentary level, to be such a shit to somebody? I don't get it. Bad vibes. No excuse. No excuse for not being kind, polite. The most badass people I know, killers, are polite, gentle people. They're not psychopaths, they're martial artists. And the last thing I want to tell my son is that you should regard yourself as you would. You should teach yourself like you would teach you if you were your child. Like, what would you give your baby or your child to eat? I often hear people that are full of shit, men usually, talking about how they do anything for their kids, but they don't. They don't do anything for their kids. When I hear that, I know, I get flags, because people that do that, they don't talk about it. They don't need to. They don't need to like flag it out there like it's some badge of honor. You're supposed to do that. And that's like that's what I would tell Forrest to do with himself. Like, you don't need to wonder how to be. Teach yourself as if you were an infant, a toddler, a young boy, girl. What is good? There's some innate sense of like what's nutritious, what's healthy, what's in fact even brilliant. How about that? What's awesome, what's brilliant. I can't believe this would be like a typical conversation I'd have with Forrest. I'm pissed today. I'm sorry. I'm being kind of judgy. Being judgy about junkies and heroin users because of, it's just, this is not what I taught him.